I love cartoons from the 1930s. You can just feel all the love and passion poured into every single frame of animation. Compared to the cheap looking, unimaginative cartoons of today, animation from the 1930s really was in a league of its own. However, as someone who is not a racist, regardless of what certain judges may tell you, I do take issue with a lot of the imagery used in some of these cartoons. As much as I love animation from this era, it was also a prime example of how shitty human beings could be to each other. Anyways, 1930s animation seems to be all the rage these days, with games like Cuphead and Enchanted Portals being heavily inspired by cartoons from that time period. Also, I don't care what anyone says, this game is looking really good. Bendy and the Ink Machine is another game inspired by 1930s animation, and it should be immediately apparent to anyone that Bendy's design is meant to pay homage to popular cartoon characters from the time, like Mickey Mouse and Felix the Cat. Although, I don't know, I feel Bendy's design isn't half as inspired as those examples. I get the feeling that anyone could easily draw Bendy without even trying. Here, look, I'll show you. So, you have to start with the head, okay? And the mistake a lot of people make when drawing Bendy is that they think his head is a complete circle, but it isn't. It has like an almost semicircle on the top, so as long as you get that down... Oh god damn it, I did it again! Bendy and the Ink Machine is a survival horror game that was developed by Kindly Beast and was released episodically over the course of a year and a half, before a complete version was finally released on October 27th, 2018. Console versions of the game were released a month later. Bendy and the Ink Machine received mixed reviews, with some critics finding the combat very clunky, while others thought the game was lacking polish overall. The game's length was also a point of contention for some critics, with it being possible to beat the entire game in just over 3 hours. Despite the lukewarm reception by critics, however, Bendy would become a cultural phenomenon overnight, with a shit ton of merchandise lining the shelves of toy shops everywhere. Everything from plushies and coffee mugs to action figures and t-shirts. For Mike Mood, the co-creator of the Bendy franchise, all this success came as a massive shock to him. He claimed that Bendy's popularity was a complete fluke and that he never foresaw the game becoming as massive as it did. But what exactly happened that caused Bendy to become a household name? Was it thanks to the usual Let's Players screaming their heads off at the game? Was MatPat's in-depth look at the game's story the reason so many people fell in love with the title? Or was it something else entirely? Well, that's what I hope to answer with today's review. Besides, it seems only right that I review this game. After all, my name is Ben, and Bendy does start with Ben. Get it? Because the first 3 letters of Bendy are B-E-N, and that spells Ben, and my name... Hey guys, if you enjoyed that Bendy starts with B-E-N joke, and you'd like to hear more material like that, please remember you can support me on Patreon. Every cent you donate helps me write more jokes like the one you just heard. Link in the description. Anyways, on with the review. In Bendy and the Ink Machine, players assume the role of Henry, a man who used to work as an animator at Joy Drew Studios. At the beginning of the game, Henry receives a letter from his old boss, asking him to return to the studio because there's something he apparently needs to see. Upon arriving at the studio, however, it doesn't take long for Henry to realise something is amiss. There are ominous messages scrawled on the walls in ink. No wall. Dreams don't come true. And trust me, I shall know. Oh, what's this? We're deeply sorry, Ben, but your application for RuPaul's Drag Race has not been successful. We have attached your application photo. Kind regards. But I look beautiful! On top of that, Henry soon discovers what appears to be a dead cartoon character, who actually looks a lot like Goofy. And let me tell you, as someone who wanted to kill Goofy at every opportunity in Kingdom Hearts, this scene already had me considering Bendy as a potential Game of the Year candidate.
Look out! Wow!
Yes! Well, alright then. Finally, I'm free of this feckin' dickhead. I'm guessing Nomura isn't the biggest fan of Goofy either, and he just wanted any excuse to kill him off. I'm so fucking happy right now. Yeah, go on, cry. No one gives a shit. I'm loving this. Finally, Mickey Mouse can join my team. Fucking hell. Whew. I know I shouldn't be happy about this, but I'm sorry. I can't.
Ah, Goofy.
Hey, fellas!
Goofy!
Why is this happening to me? Or why are these things able to come upon me?
As Henry explores more and more of the studio, he starts to get the feeling that he's being watched by something. Something Bendy. In my opinion, this whole first chapter is expertly put together. There isn't really any combat or intense puzzle solving, but the atmosphere in this area is just incredible. The studio feels completely abandoned, and aside from the odd cardboard cutout of Bendy giving me a heart attack. Oh, you motherfucker. You really do feel completely alone in this place. That is, until near the end of the chapter when you come face to face with this monstrosity. Within seconds, you've gone from happily solving puzzles in a non-threatening environment to suddenly running for your life in an intense chase sequence. It's brilliant, and the game frequently switches things up like this. Be it with a boss fight, stealth sequence, or a clever puzzle, you're very rarely doing the same thing for too long in Bendy and the Ink Machine. That doesn't mean everything the game attempts is executed flawlessly, however. In Chapter 2, Henry encounters these creatures made of ink, and is forced to defeat them using an axe. And the combat in this game, it's not good, at all. I swear Henry's hitbox is way bigger than you think it would be. I always seem to get hit by guys miles away from me. What's more is that there's very little skill or depth to the combat. You mash the attack button and that's it. Don't get me wrong, the combat in this game isn't the worst thing ever, but it's easily the weakest part of Bendy's gameplay. By exploring every nook and cranny of the studio, you can find audio logs that fill you in more about the people who used to work in this studio, and what went wrong that dangerous creatures are now wandering the halls of this place. Much like Bioshock, most of the game's story will be told to you through these audio logs, instead of traditional cutscenes, and I've always liked this approach to storytelling. It allows you to get on with playing the game, instead of having to deal with long cutscenes every 10 minutes. Speaking of Bioshock, there are a few other areas where Bendy takes inspiration from that masterpiece. Several areas of Joy Drew Studios will bring back memories of Rapture, and Bendy even features a similar respawn system to Bioshock. When you die in Bendy and the Ink Machine, instead of being sent back to the last checkpoint, you instead respawn at the last Bendy statue you passed, with no progress lost. It works in pretty much the same way as the Vita Chambers in Bioshock. As much as I adore Bioshock, the Vita Chambers pretty much destroyed all challenge in the game, since you could respawn indefinitely, and all enemies you defeated would remain dead. At least Bioshock gave you the option of disabling Vita Chambers. No such luck in Bendy, however. Much of your time playing Bendy will be spent solving simple puzzles, or finding items and then bringing them to someone or something. This gameplay loop can get a little repetitive after a while, especially once you reach Chapter 3 and a character forces you to go on multiple fetch quests. I mean, this whole section just goes on and on. So this character named Alice asks you to find some items for her, so you go find the items and then you bring them back to her. She then asks you to find some more items, so you go find them and you bring them back to her. By the time she was asking me to destroy all cardboard cutouts of Bendy in the area, it became very obvious to me that this whole chapter served no other purpose than to pad out the length of the game. There are some really clever puzzles in the game, including one where you have to play some instruments in the correct order, but I was frustrated that there weren't more moments like this. However, while Chapter 3 mostly sucks, and there aren't enough good puzzles in the game, there are still plenty of moments that stuck with me long after I completed Bendy and the Ink Machine. A great boss fight in a spooky house setting, and a fun fair where you have to complete various minigames to proceed were some highlights for me. There are definitely some weak moments in Bendy and the Ink Machine, but when everything clicks, it's still a very enjoyable experience. Bendy and the Ink Machine's visuals are very eye-catching. The whole game basically looks like an old cartoon, rendered fully in 3D. Think something like 13 on the PS2 and you have the general idea. Unfortunately, these visuals seem to come at the cost of performance, at least on PS4. I can't even describe how infuriating it is to see an indie game with charming yet simplistic graphics running so poorly, even on a PS4 Pro, which is where all the footage you're seeing right now was captured from. The game is locked at 30 FPS on PS4, even though 60 seems like it would have been totally doable. But what's worse is that the game is not even locked at 30, with occasional dips into the 20s. It's not enough to ruin the game, but it's just baffling how poorly optimized this game is on console. Despite its cutesy appearance, Bendy and the Ink Machine can be a genuinely terrifying game at times. A stealth sequence at the end of Chapter 3, where you're forced to collect materials in a dark cave while avoiding a character named the Projectionist, is genuinely one of the tensest experiences you're likely to find in a survival horror game. I'm actually surprised the game got a teen rating. With how dark and horrific a lot of the content in this game is, I'm surprised the developers didn't push a little bit harder to get an M rating. An M rating might have allowed the story to go to some really disturbing places, but as it is, it sometimes feels like the developers are holding back from telling the kind of story they really wanted to, so that the kiddies could also play the game. After all, how would they have sold all that merchandise if the developers had aimed for an M rating? Speaking of the story, I found the plot in this game to be very interesting, but almost incomprehensible at times. If it wasn't for Game Theory's excellent videos on Bendy, I probably wouldn't have had a clue what was going on by the end of the game, and I kinda think that was the point. I feel like the developers of Bendy wanted people to come up with their own theories about what the story in the game means, which is fine, but I look at a game like Five Nights at Freddy's with its confusing plot and thousands of fan theory videos, and I start thinking that the only reason Kindly Beast made the story in Bendy so incoherent is because they wanted to replicate the success of that series. I could be wrong, but I'm probably not. I don't trust people anymore. What? €500? They charged me at least 3 times that. Overall, I really enjoyed my time with Bendy. Yes, it's a short game, but all the best things in life are short, like dwarf weddings. This is so fucking beautiful. I cry every time, I can't help it. It's also a budget title, so for the price you're paying, I think the length shouldn't be an issue for most people. The game has a beautiful art style, engaging gameplay, and can be genuinely scary at times. If you're looking for something spooky to play this Halloween, but are a cheap piece of shit like myself, maybe give Bendy a go. Hey, speaking of being a cheap piece of shit, consider supporting me on Patreon, because I don't have any fucking money. And also Christmas is coming soon and I would like to be able to afford wrapping paper. Thanks guys. Oh, and remember to like and subscribe to my channel. I put so much work into my videos and I really deserve 1 million subscribers by now. What? Anyways, thank you for taking the time to view my video and I'll see you guys soon. Happy Halloween!